A couple of weeks ago, I was in my local camera store and I was looking for, I think, some Jobo parts or something that they didn't actually have in stock at all. But one thing they did have in stock was this, the new color negative film from Lomochrome Metropolis. Now, I'd heard very interesting things about this film and I'd seen a few videos on people shooting it, so obviously I decided to shoot it as well. So I bought a box of Lomochrome Metropolis in 35mm, loaded it into my F100 with a nifty 50 and headed out to do some shooting. And here I ran into my first problem because this film does not have an ISO rating, it has an XOR rating of 100 to 400. I'm assuming that's like an exposure rating or something, I don't even know what that means. But it says to rate it between 100 and 400 ISO, which is something I find very annoying and, if you know how film works, is complete utter nonsense. And that's because once film is made, it has a fixed light sensitivity, which is then placed on the ISO scale. So now I need to decide what to rate this film at, and I went with ISO 400 because it would be incredibly stupid of Lomography to encourage people to underexpose a color negative film by 2 stops, because that would just crush out all the shadow detail and it would turn kind of muddy and awful looking. Generally with color negative film, overexposing by 2 stops is sometimes actually a decent choice depending on the situation and what kind of look you're going for. But the advice is never to purposely underexpose your film. So I decided to rate it at 400, which I do suspect is the true ISO of this film. In order to develop the negatives, I used my Jobo machine and a Fuji Express C41 kit, and here are the negatives that came out of the machine. Something that jumped out of me straight away when I took these negatives out of the tank was the fact that the film base has a weird green tint to it, compared to C41's normal orange tint. If we take a look at some scans here, we can clearly see that Lomochrome Metropolis is leaning very heavily into the stylized category of films with its bleach bypass look. And it gives the film this sort of desaturated, kind of gritty, urban, industrial, kind of wastelandy look to it. And it's definitely an interesting style. Now, personally, I'm not a fan of this kind of stuff. I much prefer to shoot, Ektar or Portra or Pro 400H. But I can see why people shoot this film, because it is something unique and interesting and there's nothing out there quite like it. So now I have to ask the question, will I shoot this film again? And the answer is, unfortunately, no. I'm not a huge fan of these sort of heavily stylized emulsions, but that's just personal preference. I do have to give Lomography massive props because this is the first new colour film to come to market in something like a decade, which is absolutely crazy that they managed to pull this off. Now, personally, I suspect that this is actually a modified Ultramax stock, where they've either shifted the dyes around or maybe they've changed the base of the film to mess with the colours, to shift them to give us this sort of bleach bypass kind of gritty look. But who cares? It's irrelevant. Lomography has managed to bring a new film to market, which is a huge achievement in this day and age of film photography. So massive props Lomography. Thank you for bringing out something new and cool and interesting for us to shoot. And that's all I have to say about this film. It's a fun, cool, stylized film that you can go out and buy and shoot in the shops. and that is a huge thing. So that is it for this video, guys, and I'll see you next time.